Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before we get into it with our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Jamie on the podcast coming to us all the way from Alberta. We got another Canuck on the podcast. I think we're in like the 20s or 30. I think we've had about 30 Canadians on the podcast. And, I love to have them on. They're overly polite, which is, something that my Minnesotan and me just kind of, it strikes a chord in my heart, right there. So I enjoyed having them on. But yeah, she's a bodybuilder on here to share her health and fitness journey. And yeah, just talk all things health and fitness. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Jamie, thank you so much for coming on.
You're very welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, this is a question that, as much flack as I always get for it, which I will continue to get, but I will continue to ask, is what is the weather like today up in Alberta today?
It is actually amazing. It is I think it's about 16 degrees already. So I don't know what that is for you guys down south.
Again, everyone, I do have to add that she is talking Celsius, not fair. See, the U.S. is the one country that said, screw the metric system. We're just going to make our own system. It's like us and one other country. So yeah, I've told people that that had come on, it's like 16 degrees. And I was like, oh, you poor thing. And then I remember that it's the metric system. So it's actually not that.
So is that in the 80s, maybe?
I think it's something where for Fahrenheit, you times it by 2 and then you add on something. You add on something to it. I don't know. I'll look it up, but it's something around there. Because I remember. Yeah, I don't even know. They don't even teach us this. Again, the American public education system, which we're not even going to get into. But that's that's a whole different topic. But before I just bash everything about my country, why don't you just give us your backstory first off on what really inspired and motivated you to become a bodybuilder and how that led to where you're at right now?
Well, I have I started out being competitive even from the time I was probably about 3. So, but it was with piano, voice, and dance. And I competed probably until I was about 16. So I started I'm pretty sure that my mom put me in dance lessons around 3. And so was very high level competitive. I didn't compete in a group though. I competed solo. So I think that from a young age, I always had that regimented routine schedule, and understood, the amount of hours of practice and dedication that it takes in order to be good at something. So fast forward, let's say, I guess when I was 19, I decided to hire a personal trainer. I initially wanted to be a firefighter. And so I never did end up becoming a firefighter, but I became a paramedic. So the reason why I hired a personal trainer is because I needed to be stronger for the physical to get into fire. And I also, even with being a paramedic, I needed to be strong. So hired a personal trainer. And from that day on, I basically lifted weights. High school too, though, I was very athletic. I didn't compete, but I played any sport possible. Excelled in basketball. That was my deal. And basically just throughout my life, I've done anything physical that I can: mountain biking, cross country skiing, skate skiing, paddle boarding, what else? Snowboarding, you name it, just anything. So I ended up having 2 kids around 2003, 2005, and it was probably about 2008 where I think a lot of moms get that itch of, hey, I want to get fit again. So, my kids were a little bit older. I had a little bit more time. So I decided, because a friend of mine was a high level competitor. She was a fitness competitor though. So Ocean Bloom, I don't know if you know who she is, but you should also have her on the podcast.
It rings a bell, and I will invite her on after this.
She's not in the fitness industry anymore. She lives in Thailand and she teaches yoga mostly now. But anyways, she inspired me to do a prep and compete. So I did a few shows between 2008 and 2010, and realized that, because at the time I was married to a shift worker, so he was a police officer, and then I also had 2 small children, and it just didn't work. It was just too much, and it was taking away from just relationships is taking away from my kids, and so I just decided to put it on the back burner. I switched gears and went into yoga and ended up owning a yoga studio for 5 years because it just allowed me a little bit more flexibility with having kids and just my current partner with his schedule. So fast forward again to I spent a few years working in the medical field after, not as a paramedic because I gave that up. And so my kids were a little bit older. I had more stability in my life, had more time on my hands. I had done competitive CrossFit for a couple of years. So I drank the Kool-Aid, kind of broke myself. And then I had been a personal trainer for a few years, which I'd done just kind of on the side for fun. And then but I was still doing some on the side, and then I was also doing nutrition coaching on the side as well. So I broke myself in CrossFit and decided, well, maybe I should just go back to bodybuilding. So, and I really wanted to look a specific way again. So I started doing, I just shifted back into bodybuilding. And then that's where everything just kind of snowballed into major life changes. So, um, a divorce, moving across the country to a different province because I was living on Vancouver Island, and starting my own business and becoming a successful coach as well, and getting back into bodybuilding and excelling in that as well. So here we are now. I started with figure a long time ago, and I have now, I would like to say, evolved into women's physique.
Well, you mentioned CrossFit broke you. Did you end up getting hurt? Because that's what I think. Out of all the CrossFitters I've had on the podcast, that's about how 90% of them leave the sport, is that they eventually get hurt. What was your experience like during doing CrossFit? Because yeah, like I'm gonna be honest, it's a cult. Everyone, I mean, let's be honest, it's a cult. Like I'll say that to people that even do it right now.
Yeah, it's I mean, I think what people are drawn to is the community, right? It's like a family. It's so different than bodybuilding, but I yeah, I ended up with just some overuse injuries, and I'm not young either, so I turned 45 in a couple weeks, and I think that I probably quit when I was 40. So had some knee issues going on, and I just didn't feel great. I was puffy, I was inflamed, I couldn't change my body composition. I just It just wasn't working for me anymore. So I mean, there are definitely pieces of it that I miss, but yeah, it's notorious for breaking people physically and then also metabolically. So I wasn't in a great spot metabolically when I left either, just because it's such a stressful type of training and exercise.
Yeah, I've had two 50-plus-year-olds on who do CrossFit, and I even told both of them, I was like, how is your body still even maintaining this? Because yeah, it is. I did two CrossFit workouts one time just because I wanted to try out and see what it was. Well, first of all, I'm 6'3", so tall people CrossFit is not really meant for you, and I learned that
No,
the hard
no,
way.
it's good for midgets. Yeah,
Yeah, it helps. Yeah, it helps if you're on the shorter side. Yeah. Well, and
yeah,
also that's a fun thing about bodybuilding too, is that most people don't understand. Is like, yeah, you go to some of these shows. Me being 6'3", I could bounce some of these competitors like a basketball, basically. Then but it's just, that's a whole different thing. But I mean,
totally.
when you were getting into bodybuilding, there's so many myths and misconceptions that the general public has about the sport. What was probably one of the biggest myths that you might have had, getting into this lifestyle? Because unfortunately, when people say bodybuilding, and then when they even add on the female aspect to it, a lot of people have a lot of things made up in their mind about the sport that aren't true.
Well, I think the biggest thing is people just think that we're only focused on aesthetics, and that we're incredibly self-centered and that it's not healthy. So I think with anything, anything can be negative. And I think that there are definitely people in the industry that are not the best role models, and don't do great things, and possibly what they're doing does not increase longevity in sport. But if you enter it into bodybuilding with the right mindset, and it's used in the right way, it can be a very powerful thing to transform you and better you in all areas of your life. And I think that lots of people don't see that, right? So I think that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions.
Oh, I mean, you can be unhealthy with anything in your life. I mean, like, I could do 8 of these podcasts a day, and yeah, that would be very unhealthy for me. Like, I don't know. First of all, I mean, my record, first of all, is 5. And after that, I just had to lie down and just fall asleep. But I mean, yeah, I mean, even I've had some guests on this podcast where I was like, I don't even know if these people are going to be alive in a year. But, it's just, it's like with anything else in life. You can, a lot of people take things to the extremes, but yeah, bodybuilding in itself is not an unhealthy sport. It's just some of the things that people do end up being unhealthy. And that's why I like to have guests come on and just show that, like, yeah, bodybuilding can be a healthy sport if, you do it the right ways and you're not, doing 8 hours of cardio a day and, all that other stuff that, I mean, I'll just spoil it already ahead. I hate cardio more than life itself. When I say cardio, I mean actual running. I go for walks all the time now, and now that it's getting, nice out, I try to get my 10,000 steps in a day. But what is your relationship with cardio like? Because unfortunately, when you become a bodybuilder, you have to sort of sign a deal with the devil when it comes to cardio.
Well, I mean, first off, too, I just wanted to say, like, bodybuilding doesn't necessarily mean that you have to compete,
Oh, absolutely.
right?
For
So,
everyone that competes, there's 50 that don't, that have the look and the training that can do it. Yeah.
yeah. So, just because, I mean, if you look at it, like, being a competitor isn't healthy. And it is really, really taxing on our bodies. And so that's why it's so important that you have either a really good coach to guide you through that process so that you do it like the safest way, the healthiest way possible. But when it comes to cardio, so I actually don't mind cardio. And the reason why is because it's a break for me to be able to listen to podcasts or to actually watch like Netflix or something. I spend a lot of time when I'm doing cardio in the beginning of prep, learning. So I listen to podcasts where I actually will learn things. Towards the end of prep, when I'm pretty depleted and my brain is kind of fried, then that's when I start watching like Netflix series, which I usually don't have time to do during the day anyways, just because my days are pretty packed. So for me, it is like it's a break. And I don't do interval training. I don't do it's just steady state on the stair mill. So and it actually gives me time to like be able to like think of and to be introspective, if that makes any sense. Like it gives me time to actually like collect my thoughts and think about things um and even just I come up with a lot of ideas uh when I'm doing cardio. So
Oh, I also keep my phone locked whenever I'm doing cardio because yeah, some of the thoughts that you get when you're doing cardio, you're like, oh, I should probably post that or something like that. It's like, no, you gotta. That's when you're really getting introspective in your head. I was like, thank God I never did. It's kind of, it's hard to explain to people, but it's kind of like how people like if you're a little bit inebriated and you do something and then the next morning you're like, oh, I can't believe I did that. That's kind of what it's like when you're getting your mind straight with that. But I'm not gonna lie to you. If it wasn't for that Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, I would not have anything to listen to for cardio. So that's been me getting my fix now when I go out for my walks nightly. So if you have something to listen to and something to take your mind off of things, yeah, it could make cardio so much easier. And so yeah, I highly recommend that as well. But I mean, I love to talk about, as much as I hate it, and I hate bringing this up, but everyone's built differently, and everyone doesn't have the same metabolism. Everyone, I hear this all the time. Oh my God, I want his arms, I want her abs, I want their back. And it's like, I just want to strangle these people because they don't understand that you can look just like someone, or I mean, you can train just like someone and eat just like
and
they do.
never.
Never look just like them. Yeah, it's never. I could eat and work out just like Jay Cutler, and I'm not going to end up looking like him. Unfortunately, that is the case.
Yeah.
But it all just comes down to just your genetics, which unfortunately do play a significant factor in this sport. I mean, some people they're not made to be a bodybuilder. That's why bodybuilding in specific, and when I say bodybuilding, like what she was talking about, I'm talking about competitors. You have to have the genetics to be a competitor. You cannot just be a normal person coming off the street and train for a couple of years and you can compete, I guess, but like you won't do anything really, and you just have to be built that way. But whenever it comes to genetics, I always love to talk about how whenever someone first gets started working out, they always have that one body part that really, really takes off that they don't have to train as much, and they have that one body part that just drags behind it. They have to train to an infinity to basically get to catch up. I mean, my back was the one thing that took off for me, and then being 6'3", my legs and my lower body, don't even get me started. I mean, I could inject pure muscle into my legs and they won't gain an ounce. Calves, I hate them more than life itself. I am convinced that calves are the most genetic body part on the planet because it seems like people are either just born with them or born without them. But what was one body part that really took off for you when you got started, and what was one body part that you just had to drag along?
So I've always been really glute and back dominant. So the things that I struggle that lag are my shoulders and my calves. They just don't grow. That's definitely a genetic thing, and my hamstrings. So, but definitely, like, if there was to, I mean, my coach always says to me that you're gonna win. If you're gonna win with something, it's gonna be with your back. So I have a pretty thick, pretty wide back, um, and it's always been really easy for me to develop my back. And then my glutes, I haven't trained them for a year and a half because they just are very dominant. So yeah.
I wish I had that problem where I had a body part that I didn't have to train for a year and a half. Are you kidding me? Do you ever think that you'll get back into it, or are you just waiting for everything else to sort of catch up before you can finally do another glute workout?
Well, I mean, of course, you doing leg press and doing hack squat, yes, you are using your glutes, but I don't do any direct glute training like a hip hint. Like, if I do any type of like deadlifting, it is for hamstring focus, but I don't do any hip thrusts. I don't do anything that is focused on glutes just because they needed to shrink. So
Well, it's just like a lot of people don't understand. Like, I get a lot of people, especially like figure girls on here, that say like, "Oh, they don't train arms," but then you don't realize that like you can train arms doing other accessory workouts. That really, and that's kind of, I guess, the same thing with a lot of
yeah.
things in the legs too. Because like, yeah, if you're doing a leg press or anything like that, you're not just working one area of the leg; you're working a good majority of it. So I guess I do guess that there is that, but this is also so much more of a mental sport than it is a physical sport, and a lot of people will never understand that don't compete. That unfortunately, just with the general public, if you were to walk out just the way you are right now, a lot of people will just be like, "Oh my God, Jamie, you look amazing." They won't understand though that mental transformation that's taken place because it's not something that's visible to people in the outside world. But what has this journey been like for you mentally? Because that mental change is 100 times more important than any physical change that you can ever have.
Um, well, I mean, I think that I've always been a very mentally resilient person in the first place. I'm very intentional and I tend to view things far more objectively than subjectively the majority of the time. I think probably like one of if you're wanting to know like just some of the biggest shifts that have occurred over the past couple of years, and that's due to some of the coaching that I have received and the mentors that I've had, which I've been really lucky to have, like John Jewett and Luke Miller in my corner, is is viewing this as like playing the long game, not the short game, and being able to see that I need to be aware of how I can improve as a human every day. And it can be like just the smallest thing, like it can be 1%, because all of those small things, those 1% add up to a big total at the end of the year. And I think that that has made such a huge difference for me just with my physique. So um, it's just made me more efficient in like all areas and far more focused on the goal at hand. So
You brought up the number one reason why I suspect that most people do not, do this lifestyle or just aren't that healthy and fit in general is that, yeah, it is a long game. You are not going to see these results over, a couple of days. And again, if that does happen to you, I will hire you as my personal trainer because you have found the secret that everybody and their brother's looking for. I'll use my entire life savings for just one training session then basically then, because I mean, that's just ridiculous. But how do you deal with that mentally too? Because when we're talking about mental stuff, that is probably one of the biggest things is that this is a sport of delayed gratification. Like you're not going to see, oh my God, I've really widened out, this last night. Basically, it's just not going to happen. So how do you deal with that delayed gratification? Because this is a sport where, I mean, you sacrifice a lot in your life for the sport whether it comes down to your time, just your all these other things that happen in your life too as well. But it's a delayed gratification. How do you deal with that process mentally? Because that can drive a lot of people crazy.
well, you have to really, 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 really enjoy the process and all of the pieces that go along with it, and understand that it isn't just the movements in the gym and the food that you shovel in your face, right? It's like, I mean, because if you actually like were to look at my genetics, I don't have the greatest genetics. And people will often say that to me. They're like, "Oh man, you must have such great genetics." And it's like, no, like I work my ass off in order to, to improve every day. Like if you look at my family, I'm really the only fit person in my family, and I honestly do not have the greatest genetics. I mean, even if you it takes me so like, it doesn't take me a lot. If I do things properly, I can put lean mass on. I've always been gifted in that area, but I am not a lean person whatsoever. My set point for, like, body composition is not lean, and it takes me so much towards the end of prep to get lean. Like, right now, like, I'm basically eating crumbs and doing huge amount of expenditure being, like, 5 weeks out from 5 and 9 weeks out from a show. So, I honestly think that it's just having that perspective of you just have to do the same thing every day. And if you do the same thing every day over and over again and you're not improving, then you just look at all of those things that you're doing that you have been doing consistently and find what one isn't working that you have to tweak. Like it's just it's like bodybuilding is pretty boring, and the more you try to complicate it or make it fancy or like the I think the less return that you get on your investment. So,
That made me laugh because that is the one response that I got from a friend of mine who just wanted, he was thinking about, doing a show, maybe stuff like that. And then he texted me 2 weeks and he goes, "This is really boring." And I was like, "What do you expect? What do you expect it was? You go to the gym, you work out, you eat your food, you go to sleep. Basically, and then you set it on repeat." I mean, that's one thing about this lifestyle too that a lot of people just don't understand too is that, like, yeah, it's not the glamorous lifestyle and I think it's because of Instagram and other places where a lot of people tend to make it look like it is when it's like, no, it's not. It's the nitty gritty. You're sweating your butt off in a gym for hours at a time, and then you're going home, you're eating your plain meals that you have prepared. And I mean, we got to get into nutrition because that is the biggest thing that affects more people than anything, is that the nutritional changes. And what was that change like for you when you changed it up with nutrition? Because a lot of people don't understand, you're going to be eating more food than you ate before. You're going to be eating, a lot of the same food. And it's just that slog into nutrition is one thing that, like I personally told you, that's the reason why I never competed, because I cannot do that for an extended period of time. But how did you manage, and what was your journey like with this whole nutrition change that you have to do when you become a bodybuilder?
well, I mean, I've always been pretty conscious of the food that I put in my body. Um, and by saying that, I by no means I'm not perfect, and I do really like food. Like, and so I think what one of the biggest shifts is it was just having the consistency of well, one, finding the foods that work best for me, for my digestion, and for me. But making sure that there's like consistency. So, I mean, like, if we're talking contest prep, it's the consistency of making sure that I eat the same foods or the same meals at the same time every day, like clockwork. It's like carbon copy of the day before, because our bodies like that. And so it's it's actually like uh it's not necessarily even just the foods, but it's down to the consistency piece of making sure that you just do this everything the same. I mean, our and and I don't necessarily subscribe to the whole you have to eat chicken and broccoli and rice, because that doesn't necessarily work for people. And so if my coach told me, well, you have to eat chicken and broccoli and rice like 6 times a day, I wouldn't be compliant, because I don't like that. So just because you're in prep doesn't mean that you can't enjoy some of the foods that you like, that can fit what your goal is. And I think that's a big misconception for people, is thinking that they have to, yes, we do have to I mean, we definitely do have to restrict certain foods, and it's because of just a response that you'll get from them. And it's, we choose specific foods, one, just because of the fiber content, the simplicity of the carbohydrates, and just the digestibility of foods. When it comes to off season, however, though, I think that one of the things that really changed for me over the past couple years, was shifting from calling it off season to improvement season. And if you are incredibly dedicated and you want to make changes in your improvement season, you have to have just as much discipline and routine and schedule in your off season or your improvement season as you do in prep. And that's, I think, a big disconnect for people, because I think that people that don't um, make improvements in their off season, usually they're just all over the place with everything in their schedule and their routine. Whereas a lot of stuff didn't change for me in my improvement season. So my meals were still planned and scheduled. Yes, of course, I had more flexibility and had meals out with friends and went on vacations, and but it was still, there was huge intention behind everything that I did in my improvement season in order to get me closer to my goal.
Yeah, that I mean, nutrition. I mean, I tell you. But what is your go-to cheat meal that you like to enjoy the most, especially during preps?
Well, I don't get any.
You don't get any cheat meals?
No, and I don't like to call them cheat meals. So if I was to get, we would call it like a refeed. So, but if I was to get a refeed, it would probably be like a bagel or white rice, and that would be about it. So that's the thing, is in order to get, I mean, there are people definitely who will have free meals or cheat meals. Um, my coach and I are like, I haven't had any RX because I'm not lean enough. I have a very, very lofty goal this year, and I need to be incredibly peeled this year. And that means that I don't get that. So, but if I was to have, if he was to say, okay, hey, you can go have a free meal, it would be sushi.
Everyone, the dedication of a bodybuilder is summed up perfectly in that last minute of her talking. So, that's again another reason why I could never do this, because I have to have my weekly cheat meal, which I call it cheat meal because I feel like I'm getting away with robbery. So, hey, I enjoy that at least. But there is that. But I mean, we talked about this before, that most people do not understand that the hardest thing in this lifestyle for so many compares is posing. And I'm not gonna lie. When I first got started doing this podcast, I was aware that posing was hard, but just talking to the hundreds of bodybuilders that I've had on, I have come to realize, just how significant it can be. And what is your relationship like with posing?
um, I don't mind it. It's, I guess the biggest piece for me is consistency with like scheduling it in. And I don't actually, I really hate posing when my body composition is not great. It's uncomfortable and you don't get the same pumps and things don't pop. And um, so I tend to hold off until about 6 weeks out, when I really start hammering posing every day. The other thing too is I have been known to procrastinate with my routine. And I'll just say that, and if you ask my partner about it, he was like losing his mind 2019 about my routine, because I didn't actually practice it until the night before I went on stage. Um, and so I kind of have a, because I have a history of dance. I So what I did with that was, I picked a song, and of course I had, a bazillion hours of cardio. I would listen to the same song over and over and over, and in my mind, I would put movements to it. So I had it all mapped out in my head, and I knew it was fine. So I practiced it the night before, and I practiced it in the hallway before I went out on stage, I think 5 or 6 times. Mike was losing his mind out in the crowd because he thought that I was going to completely shit the bed. I came out and he videoed it and he said that it looked like I had practiced it for 6 months. So, I kinda shifted the last time, that I did a routine, and I practiced it far more. So I would say probably 2 weeks out, I started practicing it and got it nailed down. But, maybe because I've been on stage so much as a kid, it doesn't really bother me, and I figured, like, if I forget it, I can just wing it, right? Like, I it's only a minute long, it's not a big deal. So, um so yeah, posing, I guess, kind of like a love-hate relationship with it. I tend to like it a lot more and get into it just closer to the show just because of course, how much leaner you are and how much more aesthetically pleasing you look in the mirror as you do it.
That
So,
helps. Yeah, I said if I could ever get down to that contest lean look, I wouldn't even probably wear clothes for the last couple of weeks. My prep really gets good then, just for that. But out of the poses that you do, what is your favorite pose and what is your least favorite pose?
oh, I hate the abdominal thigh pose. I think that it's so ugly.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, and then my favorite, of course, is my rear double bi. That's my favorite for sure. Well, one, because of my glutes and because of my back. So, and my front double bicep too is pretty good. Um, yeah.
Again, another little thing that most people don't understand is that like when you're doing this stuff on stage and you have your back turned, you can put your smile down. Most people don't understand that your jaw muscle is going to be one of the most sore things after these shows because
And you
you're
can let your belly out.
a little bit too. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and
Yes.
with
When you're
that,
turned around, it's a time where you can actually relax and you let your belly and you belly breathe yeah,
yep,
yeah.
and that ab and thigh. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's only been probably like one or two people that I know of that can actually make that look like natural and flowing because it's just such an unnatural pose, really.
I know. I think it's
To
so
do.
ugly.
Yeah, they gotta find a different way to show off the abs or do something like that because yeah, it just yeah, seeing some of those, yeah, it's definitely something that needs to be improved on. And what is that feeling like for you when you walk up on that stage? After going through all these hard days on a prep and just going through everything that a prep entails, finally going up on stage and being able to show off all that hard work. What is that moment like for you when you step on that stage?
Um, well, I mean, of course, you always feel a little bit nervous, and it's and of course, depending on how your physique is coming in, like, I think it's like a sense of like accomplishment that you make it there in the first place. And I've always felt like, well, not always, I guess just like over the past few years, I felt that like pretty confident with where my physique was at. And that's a big thing for me is that every time I step on stage, I want to beat the girl from last time. I don't want to look the same. I want to look better. Um, I just want to be better. So, and it's I don't know. I mean, I get excited because you put so much work in, and like I'll just I'll just like you're so ugly for so long in prep. Like, oh my god, like it's like, oh my god, when was the last time I washed my hair? We have 2 cardio sessions and a training session, and you got to get 12,000 steps in a day, and then on top, I'm like replying to check-ins and trying. It's just y- often we look like we're just pounding away, and you don't have a whole lot of time to like do your hair or put makeup on, and I'm always in like hoodies and sweatshirts and like gym clothes, and I kind of look like a hobo for like how many months leading up to, and and it's this moment where finally like you've had a couple days of rest and you've eaten and your muscles are full and you're like super tanned and you get to finally put that sparkly suit on, and it's like I mean, you feel pretty amazing, and you're it's like a transformation because you go from being like sweaty hobo to like super glam, clean hair, all tan, tiny suit, super jacked, and you get to show off everything that you've like poured your heart and soul into for 6 months.
Yeah, that must have been, I mean, that must just be a great feeling. I can't really imagine. I mean, other than being an athlete on a team sport, there's nothing that really, I don't think really, comes close to that. But you mentioned time, and I mean, time management is one thing that I struggle with in my life. I'm not going to lie. And you being a mom, being a bodybuilder, and having a full-time job, I mean, if you were to give me two of those three, I would probably drive myself crazy. So what is your time management like? How are you able to function as a human being with all that stuff on your plate? Oh God. Oh my God. Dear God.
I do that every night, and
Oh.
it's down to half-hour blocks. So, um, I'm very, very scheduled and routine with everything in order to get stuff done, to keep myself on track, especially just because towards the end, I don't have a lot of brain power. My decision-making skills are are a little bit off. So, um, I I have a like, at night, I sit down and I plan my day out ahead of time, just because it's tight, and I feel like in prep, my days get shorter for some reason. It's like they evaporate. I get up at like 5:30, and all of a sudden I'm just like, holy shit, 2 o'clock. And then I always train at 1:30, 2 o'clock. And then training's done, get my last half hour of cardio in, and it's 4:30, 5 o'clock. And then it's like, then I gotta have to start getting stuff ready for the next day. Like, it's just like, I'm like, where where does it go?
Well,
So
you've worked perfectly into my whole master plan why I ever did this podcast in the first place, because I always want to wait until everyone's about a week out, and I'll just ask them for their social security number, and some of these people are so brain dead that they'll give it to me, so I'll get lucky every once in a while. So yeah, that's the whole reason I started this. No, but I'm just I mean, prep brain stories are some of the funniest things to me. I mean, I had the closest thing I ever had to a prep brain story was that I was at UPS and I was doing an 18-hour shift where it wasn't mandatory. I volunteered, which I regret to this day. I got like 60,000 steps in over 18 hours. I had my step counter thing on me. When I was walking home to get to my car, I was just freaking out the whole time. Oh my God, where are my keys? Where are my keys? Where are my keys? They were in my hand the entire time I was freaking out about where my keys are. So yeah, that's the closest thing I think I ever came to a prep brain story. But yeah, that's
yeah, and this past weekend I was at a competition because I had some clients in a show. And they're pretty high output for a coach, because I'm pretty stressed. I want my clients to do well, and we're running around, and I'm looking at them every half an hour and wonder, figuring out what to feed them and what to water them. And I think that night it was like midnight or 1 in the morning. I usually go to bed at like 9:30. And I actually fell asleep with my glasses on. So, and I like woke up like in the same position, still had my glasses on. My hair was like in a bun, which I usually don't, but I was just like so exhausted. But it was like all the fatigue compounding from prep. Plus, I had to get cardio and steps in that day. And then I was chasing clients and just like, yep.
that is the life for you. Yeah, I mean, I would I probably would have done more embarrassing things than that. So at least another reason why I didn't compete everyone. But I mean, let's just be completely honest. You're not the average looking woman, especially close to 45 years old, which even to me is just like, it's incredible. But like when you walk out in public dressed the way that you are right now, you are going to get people's attention just because, when people don't see something that's of the normal, they just, oh, wow, that's interesting. It's just, human nature just to be, curious about things. But what has that been like for you as your journey has gone on? Has it gotten easier for you to accept the fact that like, hey, I'm going to draw more people's attention? Or is it still one of those things where you're just like, oh, this is really strange at times?
Yeah, because I don't often view myself as being abnormal, or like, I just kind of see myself as just like a normal person. And it's interesting, the response that I will get from people. I mean, of course, it depends on where I'm at in prep. And well, like, so I think some people are very intimidated by me, and they think that I'm like really aggressive and unfriendly. Um, and and then there's some people who are just super judgmental. And then there's some people who will come up to me and like say, like, I just want to let you know, like, I think you have such an incredible physique, and you are my goal, and blah blah blah. I was in Calgary on the weekend for that show, so of course I was in a couple of different gyms just because I had to do drop-ins. And so, I mean, lots of people stare at me because of course, yes, I do look different. But, there were a couple of women that actually came up to me to compliment me, which I'm often kind of taken aback by when people come and say that to me. Um, but and then there's definitely like a demographic that gives me dirty looks, and not necessarily men. I find it comes more from women, and I feel like it's probably just a self confidence thing, where they it's just whether they're judging me because they can't commit to do something like that, or and also people, I think, just some people just don't understand. So yeah, I know that the gym that I train at now here in Lethbridge, I know people like say that I'm very intense and I'm very like um driven, and I'm not approachable, but I also think too that that's like their perception and something they have to get over. It has nothing to do with me, because if people come and talk to me, they'll find that I will answer any question. I will help them with whatever they need help with. And I'm very friendly, um but it's just that stigma of like, I think maybe women that have muscle, that people just create this judgment about us that we're not friendly, or because the way my physique looks, I therefore don't want to talk to people who don't have the same physique as me, which is totally not true. Like, you
That
know,
is, the number one reason why whenever people ask me like, why do you still have all these bodybuilders on? Why do you? And I said, because they're some of the nicest people on the planet. Yeah, if I had 5 of them on and they were all complete a holes and like how a lot of people think they would be, yeah, I wouldn't have kept having them on. But it's just, yeah, they're some of the nicest people you'll ever meet, and yeah, I mean, that was the number one thing too that shocked me when I started this podcast, because I would have never guessed in a million years that a lot of times it's women more, for especially the female side of the bodybuilding, that tend to give a little bit more of the looks and stuff like that. I would have never guessed that in a million years, but it's one of those things that, the vast majority of guests that I had on that are females say that tends to be the thing, which, again, is just one thing that, really, really shocked me. But before we get into
yeah,
the,
and like something else too that I just know, and I mean other women might notice this too, is like there's been definitely been times when I'm solo by myself in public, and women will like see me and then they'll like latch onto their partner and like it's like, don't worry,
this girl's in shape, so she's looking for a brawl, basically. Yeah.
or know that I'm gonna try and steal their
Oh,
partner,
yeah, that too.
right? And I mean, lots of guys do look at me. They just do, and I don't notice it because I'm completely oblivious, but it's my boyfriend that notices all the time. And so whereas I'm just like, I am completely oblivious to it, and but he's the one that tells me. Um and it's things like, I went to a water park a few weeks ago, in Edmonton, like the water park with some friends, and it's just like people just stare. And it's like the guys stare and then their wives are, giving me dirty looks. So, but it's like, yeah.
Hmm.
So that's mostly what I notice.
Yeah, the stairs. I mean, it's something that, yeah, I've found that a lot of the bodybuilders, it's nice to be a little oblivious to that, which is nice. But yeah, your significant others, I mean, they're the unsung heroes of this podcast, having to deal with all that stuff, having to deal with these guest people on prep and stuff like that. I mean, hey, I always like to give a shout out to them, towards the end of the podcast. But before we ask the final few questions, I mean, your entire right arm is tattooed. I love to
Oh
hear
yeah.
tattoo stories. What is the reasoning behind the tattoo?
Um, well, I got the rose done because my grandmother always had tons of rose bushes, so it was kind of in memory of her. Um, and same with like, she always had lots of flowers in her garden, so there's like a peony. I don't know, I guess I got a skull in here because I just like I just liked it. Um, and so all the other ones, the Sanskrit on my forearms is, it's kind of like the 10 commandments but not religious. So and then this one also is, so I have a Matrushka doll,
Can you
which
like make
is,
it dance or something like that, or is it just?
yeah. So this one's because my grandmother is Russian, and so we had Matrushka dolls. Um this side eventually will have a sleeve too, but yes, there's like, this one is the landmark for my partner and I's favorite place on earth, which is in Mexico. Um, These ones are, I just have like my kids' names. So I
Oh,
have
okay.
Georgia on this hand and I have Selkirk on this hand. And so there's always a meaning behind all of them.
Okay, now I gotta. So Selkirk, what was the reason behind that name?
Well, that was my grandpa's middle name, and he was born in the Selkirk mountain range. And so we decided on that name just because it's quite unique and just in memory of my grandpa.
Whenever
So
I hear a unique name, I always got to find the reasoning for it because yeah, that is I
yeah,
have never heard that name before. So as soon as I was, oh yeah, that's great. So
yeah.
yeah, that is awesome. I have never gotten a tattoo myself just because I would well, I'm old enough now, but if I ever got one before I was like 21, my parents would have probably killed me. So, you know, there's a thing like that. But yeah, but I do have some friends that have tattoos. I don't know what I would get for a tattoo because I'm one of those people who was like, it's got to be something that I'll be proud of when I'm 70. Because with this generation of everyone getting tattoos, I cannot wait till I'm around 70 and they're 72 just to see some of these people rocking their tattoos when they're in their old age. That'll be an interesting sight to see because you don't see that many of it right now. But I mean, as we wrap this up, I mean, if there was one thing that you could change about the sport of bodybuilding, if someone came up to you and said, you know, Jamie, you can change one thing and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing about the sport of bodybuilding that you'd like to see changed?
Oh my god. That's not an easy
We save the
question.
golden ones for the end here.
Um, now you're totally putting me on the spot with this one.
I can give you my answer while you're thinking.
Okay, you tell me your
So,
answer.
well, for me, obviously, prize money. I mean, that's just a given. You know, I don't get.
Yeah.
I mean, even we're not even talking about the difference between men and women. I'm talking about just making it where. For my thing is like, if you're a pro in this sport, you should not have to have a day job. Like, you should be able for either through sponsorships or through other things. Like, you should be able to just focus on this lifestyle because this lifestyle is harder than any full-time job I think that anyone would ever have unless you're I don't know if there is one that it's even harder just because of the dedication that you need to have. And then also with the judging too, where it's like you might go to one show and they want a little bit more of a fuller look, then you go to another show and they might want the more of the peeled look, the more of the conditioned look. It's just I know it's human error because like human beings, you know, they want different things and judges want different things, but just giving it more of a central look where it's like this is exactly what we're looking for. We're not going to change our minds halfway just because so many people they go to some of these shows and they might not know who the judges are and the next thing you know they come in super shredded but then it's like oh the judges don't want that super shredded look. It's just finding an even way that people understand ahead of time like this is exactly the look that we want.
Well, that I mean, that definitely could be one of them is like just the standards of judging for sure, because I think that there are so many different there's if you look at if you do look at what the standards are supposed to be for each category, the people that are being awarded do not fit them, right? Um, so that's definitely one. But I think the other thing, if I could change one thing about the bodybuilding industry, it would be that there needs to be set in stone a standard of coaching. That in order to coach, you need like there needs to be a standard, no different like a governing body, no different than I mean, which is I mean completely asinine, and I know it's like super far fetched, but because if we continue on the way we are right now, more people are going to die.
Yep.
And there's really, really little longevity in the sport right now. And I think it's because of the way that, you know, social media has created too much information, too much bad information. And we live on this spectrum of extremes. And like I talked about before, people don't want the long game. They want the short term return, the instant gratification. And that's really, really detrimental to the sport of bodybuilding.
Well, you said it perfectly. I was going to ask you. This is going to be my next question. Was you know there's been a lot of deaths, especially last year in the sport was like I think a watershed year where a lot of people in the general public were finally like informed of you know like how extreme this sport can be because there's so many deaths happening and you know hopefully there are have been some changes made. But what was your reaction like as a competitor to this last year where you know so many people died?
Well, of course, it's like me. I just think like things have to change, and we have to shift somehow. I think a lot of it had to do with just the fallout from from COVID. I think there was a lot of really bad stuff that happened to people mentally, like emotionally, psychologically, especially in the bodybuilding world where we already have so many like body dysmorphia issues and then just like abuse issues with like anabolics and substance abuse and um yeah, I think it's just been a really hard couple years and it just came to a head And unfortunately, it was, a number of an far too many people it happened to. And
It was really the perfect storm if you look back on it now, of just things happening and then just, but yeah. I mean, I'm still dealing with stuff from COVID, not the disease, but like just the everything that happened,
yeah,
where it's like sometimes even just talking to people, you just feel kind of funny because like I took such a long period of like not really being social with them. Other than this podcast, was the one thing that really kept me, sane really during the whole pandemic. But
I know
yeah,
we
just
we actually started a podcast during the
yeah,
pandemic as well, because it was like, I think people just needed to be connected.
yeah.
People felt so isolated, and it was like they just wanted to like hear that everyone else was like struggling too, and to be able to relate to that. So
Yeah, I mean, we are a month away now from my 4-year anniversary of this podcast, but yeah, this really, it saved me a lot during the pandemic of just having people to talk to, where, but yeah, that is great. And now the question that I've just only recently been asking people as we wrap things up here is, I don't get why it took me this long to ask this question, but even I have this as a person who's talked to hundreds of bodybuilders on this podcast. Even I ask this to myself at times when I'm talking to these guys: why do they do this? Why do they put themselves through this? I hear all these horror stories of preps, and I hear all of, like how much of a toll this sport can take on people. And even I, as someone who supports the sport and love the sport, and love to watch people compete, even I ask myself, I was like, why do you do this? Like, why do you do this to yourself? And I bet even you as a competitor say that to yourself every once in a while, especially during preps. How do you like to respond to that? Because I bet you do hear that a lot from people. It's like, why do you put yourself through this?
um well, I think one of the reasons why for sure is because I am a coach. And this is what I do to coach people. And I feel like if I don't continue doing this for a bit longer, just because the industry changes so much, and I don't keep up with that that I can't provide a level of coaching that I want to. I mean, because I can't. I mean, yeah, I can't compete forever, but for me, I want to like I want to step on a national stage this year to have that experience, so that when I have clients who are stepping on national stages, I also I've been there, so I can provide that level of coaching for them. Um, there are a number of things that about bodybuilding, or just all of it, that makes my life better. It helps me to be a better person in all areas of my life, which a lot of people don't understand. But I've always said that if it ever starts to take away, that I'm done, right? So, so yeah, I think that's kind of where I sit with that.
Yeah, I'm currently making a compilation of all the guests that I've asked that question to, and just going to publish it, like why people do bodybuilding and stuff like that. Because yeah, there's so many different answers to that, and it's, you know, yeah, and a lot of people. I mean, it's like this is a little bit more of a healthier addiction than being addicted to drugs, which is a lot of alternatives. A lot of people. That's what my dad says. Like exercise, it's a healthy addiction that you can have. So there's so many benefits to it. But I mean, again, Jamie, I cannot thank you enough for coming on and sharing your story with us. And everyone, go and follow her on her Instagram page. I'll leave a link down below. And I look forward to talking to you again. We'll have you on sometime next year to talk about what you've accomplished. And when we do have you on next year, where would you like to be at in your journey? What are some goals that you'd like to have achieved?
Ooh, well, I mean, I'm definitely pushing for a pro card this year, so I'm heading to Pittsburgh in July, for Masters Nationals. I'm going to go compete with the old people since I'm old. And I'm really excited though, just because of I've never competed in the States. And one of the things I struggle with here in Canada, being a women's physique competitor, is there's no competition for me. And so I spend so much time and effort doing this. And it's like, I want to step on stage where I actually have competition. And so by going down to the States, we'll actually see, where my physique stands up against other
Had they
competitors.
said, is there a reason why there aren't that many? Because like I've heard that from other women's physique competitors from Canada, like why they don't have any shows up there
Well, we have shows, but we don't have any
or
girls
pro
show
shows. Yeah,
up.
yeah. Oh, okay, yeah.
Well, no, just the amount of female physique competitors in Canada is very small. The thing is like, to be a physique competitor, you have to put in time. Why do you think there are so many bikini competitors at regional shows?
Because you can
It's
walk off the
because,
beach and train for a year, and then you'll be ready for a show. Yeah,
well, that even that, like, I mean, there's lots of people who they can just prep for like 16 weeks and compete in bikini, right? women's physique takes time and effort to build a physique because it's, I mean, it's women's physique. Like, so I think that's part of it, is that physiques aren't developed enough. So, and it's hard. It's really hard. So, and for whatever reason, I think that there's a lot of women in the States that were bodybuilders. When bodybuilding kind of shit the bed for a while in the States, they just shifted to women's physique. So, there are a lot more physique. Well, they're just far more athletes in the United States. It's a way larger community than what there is in Canada. So that's, I mean, by this time next year, I imagine that I will be in improvement season, hopefully preparing for a pro debut.
That to me is the craziest thing about Canada in general, is that it's like the same size as the United States. It might even be just a little bit bigger. Yet, what is it, like 90% of the population lives within like 50 miles of the of the U.S. border, basically, where there is nothing once you get basically 100 miles into Canada. You might find some people living up there a little bit, but I've always wanted to visit. I've always wanted to go there. I've never been to Canada myself. I'm about 3 hours away from the border into right up in Duluth, kind of where that border area right there. I could drive in
Yeah,
about 3 hours. So, I've always wanted to. Maybe one of these days I will. But yeah, that is awesome. And again, Jamie, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey. I
very
really,
welcome.
really appreciate it.
Well, I look forward to coming back again. You can hit me up after competition season's over and the dust is settled,
Yeah, that's my favorite, to talk to people, because like a lot of people are like,
and
no,
I
I don't
won't
want to
have
show my
diet
off season
face.
look. And I was like, yeah, people are like, I don't want to show my off season look. And I was like, what are you talking about? This is the ultimate motivation for you then, that you can, because like, yeah, when you mentioned posing in your off season, like the people that do that are a special kind of person. The ones that still do it
Yeah,
like every day in the off season, because I was like, I could never do that if I was in my off season. I wouldn't even want to look in a mirror. Basically, I would just be. That's the good thing about living where we live on this part of the world, is that yeah, we have about 6 or 7 months out of the year where we can literally just live in a sweater and it's socially acceptable because it's just too damn cold. So
it's the same as here. Yeah,
yeah, so there's
totally.
that's how it is. But again, everyone, go and check her out. I'll leave a link down below. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing off. Have a great day, everyone.